welcome to another edition of the forum. This time around, the forum is here in Yaounde at the U.S. Embassy compound of here in the hall. And our guest today is Mr. Matthew Smith, who is the Chargé d'Affaires of the U.S. Embassy. Mr. Smith, it's a pleasure to have you here, or have us here in your office today.
It's always a great pleasure to talk to you, Elie. You're a dear friend, and the Fourth Estate, the press in this country, plays a very critical role. And I'm always happy to support them in any way I can. Thank you very much.
Now, you seem to, from your bio I've seen today, you seem to have an in-depth knowledge of the African continent and Cameroon in particular. I think our viewers would like to know how long Mr. Smith has been here in Cameroon or in Africa.
Well, Elie, I've been really blessed. You know, I started my career here back in 2001. I spent 2 years, and then I came back in 2015, and I will leave in 2018, meaning that I will have spent more than a quarter of my diplomatic career right here in Cameroon.
That's very good. And now, tell us, you have spent a part of your diplomatic career right here in Cameroon. What appraisal can you make of the Cameroon in general, and then the relationship between the United States and the government of Cameroon?
There's a natural partnership, and let me tell you why I say that. We are both very diverse countries. America, you know, has had a complex last couple of years in its political environment as we struggle to get people to hear each other's points of view. That people seem very fossilized in different areas of their points of view, and we are a very diverse nation. And we are, by diversity, supposed to have many points of view. Same for Cameroon. 270 ethnic groups. A remarkable diversity on the African continent. And of course, Cameroon has had an interesting last few years as well, with lots of heated discussions going on. And what we encourage always is for people to really listen and hear each other. And I think sometimes that can be very difficult, but it's really important. And as we come up on an election in 2018, having these diverse voices expressing themselves in the community is a real important way to build the future. I think Cameroon is a country with so much potential, and the ways in which it fully realizes that potential, the ideas on those, are as diverse as the nation.
Okay. Now, in saying what you're saying is very good, and Cameroonians will now understand that you have a very profound knowledge of this country, given the number of ethnic groups you seem to master. Now, the other point of view that some listeners would like to, the viewers would like to know is, well, the United States has been helping Cameroon on a variety of issues and various domains. Can you please tell us some precise area of choice in the cooperation between the United States and Cameroon?
Sure. It starts with the security relationship. You know, Cameroon, of course, has faced a foreign menace in Boko Haram, and it has faced them off very well. It declared the first war in its history in 2014, and at the same time, President Barack Obama declared Boko Haram a foreign terrorist organization. And so we came to agreement that Boko Haram needed to be defeated. And we immediately began working together to keep Cameroon's very capable fighting forces alive. So we have focused on delivering equipment to permit them to stay safe, to deliver training to permit them to stay safe and stay in the battle and protect the Cameroonian homeland. And they've done a magnificent job. Another critical area is health. That, you know, basically, again, our focus has been to keep Cameroonians alive, to help them manage through the many risks that they come out of the forest. You know, you've got Ebola and HIV/AIDS and other pandemic health risks that create a huge difficulty for the Cameroonian healthcare system. But Cameroon is doing a wonderful job with our help in responding. In fact, His Excellency the President of the Republic was invited to speak at the United Nations General Assembly to talk about their success in the Global Health Security Agenda, U.S. President Barack Obama initiative. And that just gives you a sense of the strength of the partnership as Cameroon stepping forward as a model for the world in how they've used this engagement and this partnership with us.
Okay. And now, you talk about Boko Haram and the aid that the United States government is giving to the Cameroon government. It's quite visible. And when we talk about Boko Haram, we talk about a regional or sub-regional threat from Libya, from Nigeria, and Chad, and you name it. What was your take as a chargé d'affaires at the recent AU-led summit that took place in Brazzaville? Do you have any opinion about that?
Well, I wasn't invited.
You weren't invited.
Really? So, I wouldn't want to jump out on that. And, the African Union has a role to play. It's a strong and important organization. Likewise, P3 partners, the United Kingdom, France, they have a role to play as well. But the key, and I think people tend to get distracted on this, is the multinational joint task force and the 4 countries of the region working together harmoniously. And they've done a magnificent job, and people don't talk enough about it. It wasn't easy or natural for Nigeria and Cameroon to come together as well as they have to fight this opponent, but they have. And Chad and Niger have been right there, both of them having some really fantastic initiatives under great difficulties. And so the credit needs to stay there, and the efforts need to be focused there.
And what role did the U.S. play to fight against the susceptibilities of Cameroon and Nigeria to now team together to fight a common enemy?
Well, again, we would not deign to tell Cameroonians and Nigerians how to get along together. They've been figuring that out for a very, very long time. I think what we try to do is bring resources for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, and other resources that the partners ask for, and then create a communication environment that's successful. But I think the countries of the region have a pretty good history of working together and figure those things out themselves.
Great. Now let's come back to Cameroon proper. You've talked about, at the outset of this program, about democracy, free speech, and everything. Now, could you tell us, in your opinion, honestly speaking, how would you rate the democracy in this country compared to when you first came here?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I would say that Cameroon, now being a multi-party state, what we would love to see is some of those parties become fully national and be able to deliver messaging that's responsive to the whole of the population. I think, all of that tribal division finds its way into the parties a bit. And again, if we can get these parties getting their ideas out in a way that speaks, for example, we've talked a lot in the last few months about Anglophone issues. It'd be great for us to be talking about Cameroon issues. And I think all the parties have an obligation to try and speak to the whole country. And that is the challenge that awaits Cameroon's full democracy. But it is a dynamic sphere, and I think Cameroon's young people are thirsting for the democracy to flourish. And so one of the key goals the United States would like to work with Cameroon on is to help get as many people registered as possible. But I also want to make the point really clear that the United States will not have a role or a favored candidate in the 2018 election. That is something left to the Cameroonian people, and I think people often have some misunderstandings about what a foreign power with a diplomatic presence in a country is supposed to do. Under the Vienna Convention, we are a guest. We are a guest of the government, and we have full respect for the government. We have a great partner working relationship. We will talk to everybody and ask how we can help, but we will not take sides.
Okay, now in terms of how you say you can assist the government of Cameroon, you will not have any favorite candidate or any kind of partisan way of doing things. What kind of precise help do you think the U.S. can offer to the Cameroonian government in view of the 2018 presidential or general elections?
Typically, it's technical assistance. So how we get the ballots where they need to be, what kind of ballots they are. monitoring at the polls, these sorts of things, registration assistance, voter education. We're willing to help, but again, we only will deliver help that's asked for. We're not in the interest of delivering help that no one has requested.
Now, I want to ask you a question which is kind of sensitive. This concerns press freedom in this country. You have a number of journalists were in jail. Part of them were freed, I think, last week. Mm-hmm. Among them, the other person who's still in jail is Ahmed Abba. Ahmed Abba, and he was arrested in an area where you are helping a lot, that's the far north. What role have you played? And I understand you speak a lot with the Cameroonian government. Don't you see that it's kind of, some people ask question, you are close to the Cameroonian government and yet they have 7 journalists in jail, or an Ahmed Abba. I'm talking about Ahmed Abba simply because he is where the epicenter of the war on Boko Haram is, and now he was reporting from the area. What has the U.S. government done?
I think people have a misunderstanding around how difficult it is for a country who's never been at war to suddenly fight a war. Cameroon had a history of peace and stability, and then suddenly found itself at war. And the United States, of course, has had many wars in its history. And we have struggled with the freedom of speech in wartime. It is not easy at all. So we don't bring judgment onto Cameroon and how we manage it. We, of course, ask Cameroon to live up to its own values and international agreements, but we respect that this is complicated. This is very, very complicated, and I don't want to get into the details of Mr. Abba's specific case, but we understand it's complex. We ask Cameroon how we can help them deal with reporting at wartime, how we can work with the media to do a better job, to deliver credible reporting in a war environment, on a war footing. Because, of course, you know, war poses an existential threat to a nation's future. And so I understand what Cameroon's doing, and we want to work as a partner, and again, ask where we can help.
Okay, now let's talk. I've asked you a question general on democracy. Now, in terms of freedom of speech, that is free speech, you have journalists in jail, some have been freed. Will you say there is a kind of progress in terms of free speech in Cameroon, or it is regressing?
It's a hard question because you're talking about Cameroon going from a peacetime footing to a wartime footing.
Exactly.
You know, Le Messager still goes to print every day.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think you find an environment of free press. I think it was the president himself who talked about the balloon, and that you have to relieve the pressure from the balloon, and a free press is how you do that. So I think at the highest levels of government, they have signaled a strong desire for a free press. Now the challenge is to figure out how you couple the free press with operating in a wartime environment. And that has been the tension. And I'm hopeful that my dear friends in the Cameroonian government will find just the right balance as they continue to work on these challenges.
Okay, and let me bring you back to the problem. Cameroon has a number of challenges, as you've named, as you've mentioned. Unlike the United States that had a history of maybe wars and now they are at peace, Cameroon is a country fraught with several crises, Boko Haram, but one which seems to have a kind of existential threat to the government of Cameroon, the recent one, the Anglophone crisis. And in this crisis, I must be honest with you, I think you are walking on a tightrope. Now, what advice do you have to the Cameroonian government as well as to the Anglophone nationalists?
It has been a difficult moment in the country's history, but you know, I have to tell you a story about when I was a boy. I'm from New York, and New York shares a border with Canada, specifically with Quebec. And when I was a boy, in Quebec, there was major unrest. There were tanks in the street. There were hundreds of people arrested. And the United States, even though that was right on its border, did not get involved. Why? because Canada is a sovereign nation. To look at Cameroon any differently would be to disrespect the very nature of the fact that Cameroon is a republic and the United States must respect its sovereignty. What we have done is we have talked to the government and we have talked to the consortium and others to talk, to work together, and to work through their issues. And my sense is that they were very close to resolving many of their issues, and then some outsiders came in and things got complicated. But I think, you know, if these good people talk to each other and work together, good outcomes are very, very possible. And again, the United States respects the sovereignty of the Republic of Cameroon.
Okay, now when you say outsiders, in the case of Canada, you had General de Gaulle who came in, and the outsiders in the Cameroonian context, who are they?
Who the Cameroonians believe in. Cameroon has a wonderful history with the United Nations, for example. And this is an organization that can bring assistance. We don't want to tell Cameroon how to solve its problems. It's disrespectful. And we've not done that. We have merely suggested that they find ways to keep the conversation going. And that's what we will continue to suggest, rather than recommending specific interlocutors. Cameroon knows who they like, and they know who their friends are, and who can be seen as objective in a discussion. And that's really critical.
And now let's come back to press freedom. You said you want the Cameroonian press to report accurately. What can the United States government do to help the Cameroonian press? We are aware that we have some shortcomings. We should be honest about that. What sort of help or assistance can the U.S. government, through the U.S. Embassy, give to the Cameroonian press in order to help them to report responsibly?
We have put a lot of energy into media training, and we will continue to do so. I've been consistently amazed with what members of the Cameroonian media can do with not a lot of resources. It is really impressive. I consider them among Cameroon's great heroes, and you included, Elie.
Thank you very much.
And so it is work that needs support, and the United States can't do it alone. I think media training and media development is a really critical priority that many of the partners should participate in, and the Cameroonian government needs to focus on as well.
Okay, and to conclude our interview, I understand you have a very busy schedule, and thank you for having accepted to speak to us. If you had any recommendation, I am mindful that you cannot interfere into the affairs of a sovereign nation. The Anglophone crisis, the problem of free speech, and the number of political prisoners who are in jail today, what will you recommend?
I think the ability to truly empathize, to truly feel what people were complaining about, and hear them well, was a key for moving it forward, and will remain a key. People have to really hear each other. Sometimes there's a habit, in our country too, of people talking past each other. And we saw a lot of that. When people truly hear each other, then we see progress. And so we will push on both sides to really do their best to listen to each other and empathize with each other's situations.
Okay, Mr. Matthew Smith, you are the Chargé d'Affaires of the U.S. Embassy in Cameroon. It was a pleasure to have you here, or to receive us here in your office. Thank you, sir.
Fantastic.
Well, that is the end of our program here in Yaounde, within the premises of the U.S. Embassy, and our guest, as you have all watched, was Mr. Matthew Smith, who is the Chargé d'Affaires of the United States Embassy here in Cameroon. Thank you very much.